Broken Weave is a supplement and campaign setting for 5th edition that threads the line between post-apocalyptic fantasy and contemplative tragedy. More than additional mechanics to add a dystopian flavor to your campaign, in this supplement you can find a real treasure trove of world-building inspiration that prompts you to think beyond your preconceived notions of a fantasy apocalypse. Not all mechanical elements convinced me 100%, but the real core juice of Broken Weave is not only the tremendous amount of inspiration it offers us while we glaze through its pages, but also the engines it provides to create drama, to heighten the feeling of fight for survival that is often so difficult to truly capture, and to create generational stories that hopefully your players will keep talking for years. This was my short review of Broken Weave by Cubicle 7 Entertainment. If you want to hear more, then welcome to Arcadian. The weave unravels, the gods are dead, the lands shattered. The world has begun to forget what it once was. Those who remain struggle to survive in a shattered world, overcome by decay, an entropic force which eats at our memories, reshapes the world, and twists people into nightmarish abominations. But all is not lost. Hope survives despite the odds. Community, love, and trust in one another can remake the world. These were the words that welcomed me when I first heard of the Broken Weave Kickstarter campaign. I never heard of Cubicle 7 Entertainment before that, but I would soon learn they were the minds behind the 4th edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and the 5th edition supplements Doctors and Daleks and Adventures in Middle-earth. 1 hour after the project's launch, it was already funded, and by the end of it, it would have exceeded its goal by about 15 times. This is no testament to the product's quality, but I do think it speaks to the powerful concept behind it, which was what ultimately captivated me into backing. If you watch this channel's most recent videos, you may be familiar with one where I share a bit of my own settings lore, specifically about the great catastrophe that ended my world. You can open it in a new tab in the eye up there or down below in the Underdark. This supplement not only seemed perfect to support that kind of play that I wanted to explore in this new era of Arcadia, but also complemented by offering fresh tragic fantasy inspiration and interesting mechanics to highlight those aspects. My favorite is, of course, the Decay, the mysterious and all-permeating miasma that slowly corrupts everything it touches, twisting time and space and transforming creatures and humanoids alike into mindless abominations. Anyway, let me walk you through what you may find in this supplement. The first section of the book is about the creation of the Haven, the settlement, or whatever remnant of civilization you want to call it, which will act both as the home base and the last bastion of safety for the party, their greatest stronghold and most precious hostage at the same time. The book encourages all players to come together and create this haven as a group, including the GM, which in practice is a lot like 10 Candles, one of the best games I ever played, which coincidentally aligns itself with this type of storytelling really well. However, Broken Weave goes one step further by providing ample resources and prompts to flesh out this settlement in ways that are not only interesting, but add character and seed drama. Then comes character creation, and here, like many other aspects of these 5e alternative rules, the system assumes that Broken Weave rules are used instead of the official 5e ones. This means that no official 5e classes are permitted, which restricts us to the 6 native ones to Broken Weave. These 6 are not bad, far from it, but I would prefer if this supplement was compatible with the official classes too and the rest of third-party content produced for 5th edition. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem possible because of several differences in power scaling and other matters of combat balance. I neither tested these classes in-game yet, nor am I the best person to talk about class design and combat balance, so you may want to take this comment with a grain of salt, but that was my initial impression. I acknowledge that this compatibility would invite some dissonances with the low magic apocalyptic setting of Broken Weave, but it would also diminish the restrictions placed on players interested in playing Broken Weave, but not with its classes. Not to mention greatly widening the GM's range of possibilities of integrating these rules in their campaigns. In the end, it's a design choice I regret, but that I also respect. But character creation is one of the sections where Broken Weave shines the most. This supplement completely revamps the character creation process, which begins by choosing the lineage. Broken Weave only offers 5: human, dwarf, elf, halfling, and the forgotten ones, but the last encompasses all other possible ancestries which, while aesthetically different, for mechanical purposes are joined into one single bag. The most interesting part, however, is the curse that each lineage bears. Like any other living creatures in Broken Weave, the player characters can accumulate the corrupting effects of decay and eventually turn into savage abominations. Each lineage's specific curse slowly gives the characters new powers born out of the chaotic effects of decay, but at the same time, they are slowly edging them ever closer to the inevitable transformation. Dwarves burst into molten masses of magma, elves crystallize into fearsome chunks of sharp shards, halflings melt down into oozes, humans turn into empty undead shells, and the Forgotten Ones simply vanish, both physically and in memory. And Cubicle 7's design only improves as, even before progressing to the class selection, the players are encouraged to define their life path, an elegant middle ground between a 5e background and a full backstory, where through several questions and prompts, and with the aid of many rollable tables with inspiration, you can make a character background much more defined than in D&D, and yet much quicker. And having more fun along the way too, I should add. In fact, I plan to emulate this method into my own custom method for character creation in my games. And what's best is that this is what produces your ability score bonuses, your proficiencies, and even some of your possessions. Personally, I don't dislike ancestry-tied bonuses in character creation, but having your character gain a +1 to strength because your upbringing was tough and forced you to work, proficiency in performance because you used to work as an entertainer, or a +1 to charisma because a life lesson in the past taught you how to diffuse situations with words, is a refreshing change of pace. After going through equipment, the book then explains a few new rules, most of which seem fairly easy to integrate with other 5e settings. They include new propositions for group tests and extended tests, which seem to expand upon the now widely disseminated concept of skill challenges, and then rules for decay and hope too. These are very important and the central aspect of Broken Weave. Hope is essentially an expanded and improved version of inspiration, which now acts as a communal resource pool that can be spent under certain circumstances. But Decay is the real crown jewel here. Not only this entropic force is able to corrupt living creatures, eventually distorting them into monsters as stated before, its influence doesn't stop there. It can also affect non-living objects, elements, the weather. Not even time or space are safe. In fact, crossing the wilderness acquires an added danger in this setting, as the laws of physics are twisted by this dark entropy. That's why survivors of the broken world usually erect waymakers in commonly traversed roads, to anchor them in reality in a way, and hold decay and its physics-corrupting effects at bay. I should also say that Broken Weave spends a considerable number of pages detailing downtime activities for players to undertake. Unlike 5e though, it considers two very different timescales in which downtime may pass, the longest of which is measured in seasons, and really propels your game forward in time. Allowing for entire seasons, most times a lot of them, to pass between quests not only promotes a more far-reaching game experience where your players don't feel like their characters went from level 1 to absolute gods within 1 month of in-game time, but can actually encourage generational gameplay, where the mantle of main characters can be handed down to new characters once the player feels ready to retire their adventurer, perhaps even their direct descendants. Before ending with 50 pages worth of monsters, this supplement spends almost that much providing inspiration for this kind of apocalyptic fantasy setting, through world-building advice or actual setting lore and locations that a GM can use to model their own version or outright borrow. It is something that is quite prevalent across the entire book, and that I value quite greatly, the attention that Cubicle 7 pays to instilling the intended tone in this setting and providing appropriate tools for GMs to capture that essence. The monsters themselves feel slightly unbalanced. I ask you again to take this comment with a grain of salt, as I didn't test them in combat yet, and I'm not the most mechanically oriented DM. I prefer to focus on lore, world building, and drama rather than the mechanical aspects of combat, which means that I don't have a lot of practice looking at CRs or HPs or damage per round and instantly recognizing imbalances. However, even if the Broken Weave classes have a bit more HP than the official ones, when a Crucible with 33 HP can deal 1d8 plus 1 damage with an attack, while a Husk deals 2d8 plus 1 or 2d10 necrotic and has a 71 HP total, it feels like a TPK recipe for an unknowing GM. And yet both monsters are CR1. Inspiration-wise though, this small bestiary is incredible, and filled with amazing inspiration to add that extra dose of creepiness an apocalyptic setting like this deserved. Each monster is not only accompanied with its own lore, but also tips on how to fight with them more effectively and even roleplay them more truthfully. The best of them all is certainly reserved for the end, with the 2 featured titans. These are gargantuan godlike creatures that aimlessly roam the world, spreading decay wherever they tread, without even noticing the cries of pain from the havens destroyed by their passage. These are campaign-ending monsters for sure, boasting their ridiculous CR30. They are so dangerous that even the book advises other strategies to deal with them, like changing the titan's path, trapping it, or even evacuating and just running. If push comes to shove, however, they bring an interesting new fighting system where survivors are encouraged to discover each titan's weakness and weak spots in order to explore it, weaken the beast, and give the party a chance of survival. They are such an amazing concept that it's kind of a waste that the book only has 2. Overall, as you can probably imagine, I can wholeheartedly recommend this book. It is not without its problems, namely the combat balance, a lot of typos that I hope will be corrected in time, and a few missed opportunities. Also, while in Haven creation, the abundance and scarcity rules also seem to promise a trade-based economy system and almost a resource management minigame that never ever materializes. I realize this is one of the least relevant aspects of the game, and I'm incredibly biased on this, loving resource management games as I do, but I wished this could have been a bit more developed. However, this is for sure one of the most inspiring RPG books I have read in the last few years, and one which will surely influence my own campaign a lot in the coming year. Just for the inspiration it provides and horizons it broadens, particularly within this specific genre, it deserved all the success it had in its Kickstarter campaign. I may have a small bias, as you surely have noticed, I am a sucker for this type of stories. However, I want to point out that I was a normal backer of The Broken Weave, and this review was not paid or even requested for that matter. In fact, I didn't have any contact with Cubicle 7 Entertainment until last month. I sent them a message asking permission to use some images and stat blocks from the book in this video, to which they kindly agreed. But I also inquired them about the possibility of interviewing some of the designers, to which they also kindly agreed. That is why next week I will be interviewing one of the Broken Weave's designers and talking with them about the setting and apocalyptic fantasy. I hope you join us then for the continuation of this video, but if you're from the future, then the link to that video should be appearing on my left right now, so go check it out. At the time of this video, The Broken Weave is not yet out for sale. However, if you got curious and want to know how you can get it once it comes out, then I point you to that video as well, where I will ask Cubicle 7 Entertainment directly. If you like this review, please subscribe and leave a like to support my work. I make weekly videos about world building, DMing tips and the like. I'd really appreciate it. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the first Arcadian, and the night is dark and full of terrors.